Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spurs Chat Podcast, Chris Cowling's channel. My name is Lee, the Dorset Spur, and I'm here to host a brand new feature, the weekly Tottenham News Review. Each week, I'll be going through the news stories making the headlines and giving my opinion on all of that. So, of course, the big story as we wake up this morning is that Tottenham have now progressed in the Europa League after beating AZ Alkmaar 3-2 on aggregate to progress. Fantastic news. It really is the most important game of the season last night. Everything else is kind of coming to a terrible end unless we put together some massive run and other teams around us start to drop off. Then the Premier League is done and dusted. So this was the one that we all wanted. Me personally, I predicted a 3-1 win, so I'm well happy with that because I finally got a prediction right. So yeah, really happy. Great news. It's good for the club. It's good for the fans. We needed that. We needed some level of joy to come from this season because it has been an awful one. It also keeps Ange Postecoglou in his job, certainly as we progress, because we've got all our eggs in this one basket. And this is the one that Ange Postecoglou needs to be able to prove that he is a manager capable of taking Tottenham to the places where we feel, as Tottenham fans, we deserve to go. Overall, I thought the game was a decent game. I thought we had some really good patches. Certainly, the winning goal from Odegaard was really well worked from back to front. Very quick, nice movement, good penetration, and so on. Nice little flick from Solanke, who falls to Odegaard, who kind of pokes it home. A real good goal and one for the fans to really celebrate. It was also interesting to see how happy it made the players. The fact that they were all over Odegaard really kind of giving him something, because I think that was a real relief for him. He's had a difficult season. So sometimes things happen for people, and that was the right thing. I think if anyone deserved it, he certainly did, given the season he's had and the criticism of him not being the player that we want him to be. But listen, you got to take that all along. Atmosphere seemed pretty good in patches after Ange Postecoglou kind of called out the fans a little bit. I don't think he was calling them out particularly, but was commenting on the need for the fans to get behind the team. Team really need to do their thing to get fans to do that, right? Because you can't just expect people to turn up and start being, supercharged without something to fight for. And this season, it hasn't given us that. So you're going to find the support is waning and difficult to get up for it. But once the team was playing and once they were really putting in the effort and showing what they could do and that there was an opportunity in it, then the fans got behind the team and it was very audible on the TV. So yeah, really good. Some decent performances from a fair few of the players who really needed to put in a performance. Maddison, who's obviously come under a lot of criticism for his kind of inconsistent performances, which I think is fair comment. Good to see him again get on the score sheet. Really good, well-worked goal. And again, it meant a lot to him. You saw him, with the badge, getting to the fans and so on. So I guess there's a little bit of relief around that as well, which is understandable, really, given how difficult it's been, and certainly after that performance out in Alkmaar, a really disappointing one. I was there, and I have to say it was really awful. It felt like we were just going nowhere, and the team was a group of players who had never played together before. But this game, totally different for the most part. Of course, we are Tottenham Hotspur. We do it the hard way since 1882, so of course we had to put ourselves under an awful lot of pressure and gift them a goal with a unfortunate ricochet between Bergvall and Odegaard, which kind of fell really nicely to the Alkmaar player who kind of buried it. Vicario had no chance at that. But overall, defensively, I felt we looked fairly good. We were solid most of the part. Of course, we had Van der Ven back, and we had Romero back, look solid, look decent together, look like they're coming along with their fitness very well. A little bit of dissent when Van der Ven went off after 60 minutes, but understandable, I guess. Now you have to kind of think about the bigger picture. We are kind of moving on now into playing Frankfurt, and so that's going to be a difficult game. And so you need all your best players to be fit and to be looked after. Van der Ven's coming back after a long injury. We need him to stay fit because we could see what he brings to the team. So yeah, really good. I think good mentions for Jed Spence. Again, another decent performance from him. Played really well, and he's becoming a key player, even on the left-hand side when we know he's technically a right wing back, playing on the left side, but doing really well there. So yeah, overall good performance. Glad that we progressed. Up next is Frankfurt, and that's going to be a different proposition altogether. Very decent team. They've won the competition not that long ago. Know what they need to do to win it, and that's going to be another challenge. But if you want to win these competitions, you've got to beat what's put in front of you. We've got the luck of the draw in terms of how the draw fell, and this is technically the easier route to the final. I don't think it's going to be easy at all. I think it'll be very difficult. I think it'll be very tight. So maybe now the Premier League games that are coming up will be about getting the form up so that we can progress in this competition and put in the best performance we can against Frankfurt and hopefully progress in that way. So yeah, really good news. Happy for that, and we kind of march on, and the season is now still alive because there was fears that was it, season over, and the rest of it was going to be a dead duck. Anyway, moving on. Second story. Of course, can't not talk about season ticket prices. So the season ticket prices have been frozen for next season. The announcement came out, I think, on Wednesday. So looking at that, when you're first looking at it, of course, sounds like good news if you're a season ticket holder. I am a season ticket holder, and so the price being frozen is good news. It's good news for me. It means that I'm not going to have to find any additional money next season. However, as always, the devil is in the detail, and there are some bits and pieces in there that are not so good for season ticket holders, senior concessions, memberships, and so on. So I guess you kind of have to think about that. Whilst it's good to have the prices frozen, there are going to be some losers in all of that because the club will obviously look at ways that it's going to make money. So whereas before, so previously, if I sold my Category A ticket, I would get back the full price of that Category A ticket. In future, I will get back 1/19 of what I've paid for it. So essentially, I'm not losing any money by selling that ticket, which is fair enough. If it works out, you're paying, I don't know, say £65 a ticket, you'll still get your £65 ticket back. However, what now happens is that will then be sold on the exchange through the club, and that will then be sold at, say, £81 for that ticket, and the difference will then go to the club. That previously would have come to me. Now, I'm not in it personally looking for financial gain from my season ticket. I'm not one of those people that sells my ticket to make money. However, there are people, I assume, that use the bigger games to compensate the cost of the season ticket going on, because times are difficult for lots and lots of people in this country, and season tickets are not cheap. So if you've got a season ticket and you're looking to try to make sure that you can keep it for next season, so you pick and choose what games you can go to, because it depends on whether you can make it or not, work commitments, life commitments, and so on, then there has been a way that you could kind of offset that a little bit. Now, that's not going to be available in future, and the person on the other end will be paying full whack, and it will go to the club. The other aspect of that doesn't sound, massively controversial, because the person was always going to pay £81 regardless, whether it went to you or whether it went to the club. But how that does impact is, as I understand it, to be able to buy a ticket on the exchange, you will need to be a member. You will not just be a CRN holder. So previously, you've been able to apply for a CRN number and be able to buy a ticket or get a ticket transferred between me and a family member, for instance, so that they are able to go to a game, a one-off game. Now, that may be, there's lots of reasons why people do that. If you live in a different country, for instance, or you are not as financially well off to be able to go to games regularly, or it's just a family member where you want to kind of share the ticket and give someone an opportunity. It appears that will no longer be available, and you will have to have a CRN number now. A membership. Now, memberships start at around £40 to £45, I believe. So that's going to mean that those people are going to have to fork that out just to be able to get a ticket through the exchange. I'm not sure how this impacts, of course, official supporters clubs as well. I wanted to talk to South Dorset Spurs team, of which I'm a part of, to understand how that's going to impact the supporters club, because I believe there are people that are in the supporters club that only have CRNs that are not members, because they can only go, as I say, individual games here and there. So they may decide that they're not able to do that because they can't afford the membership, which would mean then that we are unable to supply them with tickets. That's something to check up on, but we'll see how that unfolds going forward. Additionally to the CRN thing is the senior concessions. Whilst it felt like they were saying that there is going to be senior concessions, I think this is going to be determined based on how long you've had your season ticket and so on, as to whether you get that concession or not. They did try to make the point that they've got more seniors than any other club, and it outstrips the capacity, and that's an impact on them. But when you consider how much money they're raking in for your season ticket and ticket prices and all the rest of it, it's hard to feel sorry for them in that context, when you've got seniors losing winter fuel allowances and now having to buy TV licenses and all this sort of stuff. That they're one thing that they've got on their corner is now no longer available. So very, 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 very disappointing that those getting close to that age may not have that opportunity. That season tickets, a little bit of good news, but also there's some underlying issues in that, which I'm sure the trust and so on will pick up on. And there are lots of people out there that are far more clued up on that sort of stuff than me. But for me personally, season ticket being frozen sounds like a good deal. Not sure they could have done anything different given the season we had. But if we go on and win the Europa League and we're in Champions League next season, then they'll argue that they could have put the prices up. Of course, this is Tottenham Hotspur. It's a business. It's not about the fans until they really, really need us. Anyway, okay. So moving on. Danso has now injured, another hamstring injury. It appears picked up this injury against Bournemouth. So again, it's really, really difficult one, isn't it? That this guy is signed for us. He's been with us since January. And straight away, come the end of February, beginning of March, he's picked up an injury. Not sure the depth of injury yet, whether that's a really, really bad one or whether it could just be a small one coming along. Of course, we've got the international break coming up, so that does help us. It gives us a little bit of time. Coincides, obviously, with the returns of Van der Ven, Romero, and Kevin Davies. Ben Davies. So not an absolute disaster, but unfortunate for the player, because I think he's been pretty good for us. I think he's come in, he's done really, really well. And, I think he's been a decent purchase for him, a good backup. He played well with Van der Ven, for sure. He also played okay with Romero. I felt the Van der Ven one seemed to be a little bit better because it gave him the opportunity to maybe push forward a little bit more. But of course, that was just a 45-minute with each. So not really had the opportunity to see how he could build that relationship with both of those. But yeah, certainly really disappointing for the lad. Of course, everyone's then calling out that it's the training methods. Ange Postecoglou has broken yet another player, is what I keep hearing. I find it really difficult. I find it really, really strange that this is all down to the training or all down to the way we play. People calling out higher press, high running and all this sort of stuff. I'm not sure that I've seen too much of that of late, if I'm being honest. Last night we played really well, but in terms of really having to charge back and make recovery runs and stuff, not really seeing that myself. I don't really recognise that in terms of the football that we're playing. So really disappointing. I can't put my finger on why we're having so many hamstring injuries. Are we just unfortunate? Is that the case? Are we just being unfortunate because we are seeing hamstring injuries in other clubs, just not at the level that we're seeing those? Is this the medical team? Are the medical team analysing the players well enough? Are we keeping an eye on that sort of stuff? It's really difficult to know, because you have to recognise that we've supposedly got the best training facilities in the world, and we've got medical staff coming out of our ears. So how it can be down to how we're training and so on just doesn't really sit right with me. Now, it may well be the case. I'm just offering an opinion, but it just seems to me that we're being really, really unlucky. Now, fingers crossed for Kevin that his injury isn't too bad and he's back with us after the international break. It still gives Ange the opportunity to be able to be careful with the other players, because it does feel like he's doing that. We saw Romero coming off. We saw Van der Ven coming off, trying to look after those players. The same with Maddison coming off, and Bergvall obviously sitting on a yellow card, so he was taken off. Just trying to utilise that squad as best he can. He said it himself, didn't he? He can't complain about not having a squad, and then when he's got a squad, not then utilising that squad to the best of their ability. He has to believe in the players that he's got. So it kind of makes sense to me. So as I say, fingers crossed for Kevin Danso. Not sure what's causing all these hamstring injuries. I'm sure it will all come out at the end of the day, possibly after Postecoglou moves on and someone from inside the club gives us a bit of an insight, maybe an ex-player or whatever, but that's one for the future, I'm sure. Sticking with the Kevin Danso theme, there was a TalkSport pundit, and I used inverted commas for pundit very, very loosely, who had a couple of things to say about Kevin Danso and, of course, Dragu Radusin. Jeez, my teeth today. Apologies. Who decided that on TalkSport it would be a good idea to call those players out specifically and use some expletives to talk about their ability. I think that's really, really disappointing. Really, really disappointing that a mainstream channel like that would allow him to use that terminology of a fellow professional or two fellow professionals. He obviously called himself out as well. I just think it's really sad. I'm seeing it quite a lot, not just with Troy Deeney, but certainly Jamie Carragher used some terminology which I thought was inappropriate and unprofessional. Jamie Redknapp is another one I've seen on TalkSport using kind of terms that you would think, well, that's not particularly professional for you as a so-called expert. As fans, if we want to call out our players and use that sort of terms, I understand it. We're just fans. But these guys are calling themselves ex-professional footballers and now pundits. They're supposed to know how the game works, how players are, and all the rest of it. And yet, then calling players out by name and using that sort of terminology just doesn't sit well with me. It smacks of clickbaiting and just trying to get people talking and make themselves feel relevant. And I think that's quite disappointing. But it does feel like that's the way these things are going. I think Spurs have taken an awful lot of negativity from the media, from these kind of things, from whether it be Talk Sport or Sky Sports or whatever. I personally think they have a responsibility to be more professional in how they come across, and the sort of things that they say to the fans, because we're watching it. You know, this is our club, this is the club that we love, and to be as negative and dismissive of the team and the club feels really, really disappointing. I have to be honest. I find it unacceptable. So that's just my view on that. I you know, some people may feel differently about that. You may feel to yourself that everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I get it. They're entitled to their opinion, but they are presenting themselves as a professional in this term, and they are not sitting there as a football fan. They're talking supposedly with a professional eye on it, and I personally think that's really unacceptable. And I'd love to see Kevin Danso and Radu Dragushin be able to show Troy Deeney up for what he is, a clickbait merchant who's past his prime, never won anything, and never achieved anything. So there you go. That one's for him. Moving on, of course, there is lots and lots of talk about transfer rumours and all that sort of stuff. There's been lots of names bandied around. For me personally, I never look at it until the player is hanging up the shirt, holding it up and giving us a view from that. But the one that did catch my eye a little bit was the talk of Richarlison moving back to Everton. The club looking for £40 million, which sounds a good deal, to be honest. We bought Richarlison for £60 million, I believe, and of course he hasn't been particularly good for us. He's been injured for a massive part of his time at Tottenham. I don't believe he is a bad player. I don't believe he is a waste of money. I think in the right team, in the right system, with the right fitness, he has something to offer. His time in Everton was particularly good. He was a sort of player you didn't want. You love to hate, I guess. You know, if he's not playing for you, then you dislike him. If he's playing for you, he's the kind of player you can kind of get behind. He does a lot of the shithousery stuff that we lack an awful lot of in times. He can kind of wind people up, and he can, draw in fouls, slow the game down when it really needs to. Those games when you're winning and it's edgy and you need someone to kind of break it up and stop momentum and, wind people up and get on the end of something just in case, that kind of stuff. I think he's that sort of player. But unfortunately, he's been blighted by injuries in his time at Tottenham, and I can't ever see him really getting back to that level. For me, I think Tottenham need to look into the market and get some more, get another striker, a proper out-and-out striker. We've obviously got Tell now, and talk of Will Lancashire developing and so on. So for me, I think if Everton want to come in and they want to pay £40 million for Richarlison, I think I would snap their hand off. I think I would grab that with both hands and say thanks very much, in a similar way we did with Dele Alli, with all the issues that Dele had. I think it's a good move. And sometimes players like that can go back to another club where they were settled, where they did do well, and it kind of clicks from. I think a good example of that was Stephen Pienaar. Had great seasons at Everton, came to Tottenham, didn't work out, went back to Everton and picked up where he left off. And hopefully, if this deal goes through, that will work for Richarlison. I think it's a good option for him, a good option for us. I know there's teams in Brazil looking at him. I think there's teams in Saudi looking at him. But I think Richarlison strikes me as a sort of player who has something to prove, who really wants to prove himself. And so for me, I think it would be good for him to stay in the Premier League. It would be good for him to rebuild his reputation before he moves into something like Brazil or Saudi towards the end of his career. So fingers crossed, if that's on the cards, that happens for him and happens to another club. And at £40 million, I think that's a good deal for us for sure. And finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about was Dominic Solanke getting an England call-up. Great news for him, bearing in mind he's had some injury worries this season. But for me, I think Solanke has been an excellent purchase. I'd love to see him get more goals. Of course I would. But in terms of his overall play, what he brings to the team, I think you can't deny that. He brings the midfield in. He works extremely hard for the team. He never stops running. His assists have been excellent. Getting one again last night to set up Odegaard. I really do rate him. I think it's a bit of a shame that he hasn't been able to be a bit more prolific, and he has suffered these injuries. But if he can stay fit, then I think we've got a decent player in our midst. I think, first season and so on. Let's see where he progresses from there. But great news for him to get a call up for the England squad. Not a big fan of international football myself personally, but I know it's a good deal for these players to be able to, play for their country and so on. So, and exciting under a new manager, of course, in Thomas Tuchel, to see how that progresses and see if England can actually get to some level of glory at some point in the future. Of course, we've had 2 finals, but unfortunately no wins. So time for something new. Let's just hope that Dominic Solanke can be a big part of that. Of course, the flip side to this is our own man, Jed Spence, not getting the England call up. There was talk about him getting that. Really disappointing for him. He's having a really, really good season. Maybe it's a little bit early because he hasn't played the whole season, came in part way through, had a bit part early on. But for me, I think he's been excellent, been a brilliant player for us, certainly as a left back, bearing in mind he is a right back. But playing at left back, I think he's shown exactly what he can do. Very dynamic, very quick, very strong on the ball, able to bring other players in, assist as well, scores goals. Well, he scored a goal. So I think it's a bit of a shame for him. But maybe it's just coming a little bit early. But I think, in time, I can see him being a mainstay in the England team. I think he'll break through at some point. Maybe he just needs a full season behind him in the first team, playing regular football and showing what he's capable of. So yeah, shame for him. Happy for Dom. But at least he's not going to go out with England and get injured. So there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, or a silver lining to this grey cloud. So anyway, listen. Hope you enjoyed that. A bit of a roundup on some of the key bits of news that have come out over the last week. I'll be back with you again next week to do another weekly review. If you like this video, please do give us a thumbs up. If you've got any ideas on how we can improve it, please do comment in the comment section below and let us know how you feel. If you don't follow me, I'm leader Dorset Spur. I am available on YouTube. I do my own thing, talking about the games afterwards. I do a review show on a Tuesday evening at 19:30. If you want to come along to that, I'll be happy to have you. And as always, thanks to Chris for letting me do this segment. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one. Up the Spurs.